Hey, my name is Evan. I'm 25. 3 months ago, I was kneeling under a married woman's kitchen sink when she smiled and said, "There's something else that needs your attention." The air smelled like citrus soap and steam, and I could feel her watching me work from across that perfect empty kitchen. What started as fixing a loose cabinet handle turned into something I still can't name. Coded signals with a blue cashmere scarf, Tuesday bike rides past her window, and the kind of careful attention that changes you from the inside out. She never asked me to leave her husband, and I never asked her to choose. But every Tuesday at 4:15, when that porch light hummed to life, we both knew exactly what we were doing. If you're watching this right now, tell me where you're from in the comments, because I still don't know if what we did was wrong. I was 25 when I learned that some houses don't need fixing. They need someone who notices where the light gets in. It started with a leak under Claire Whitfield's farmhouse sink. Late morning, steam rising from the hot water line, that sharp citrus smell of her hand soap cutting through the air. I was on my knees, adjusting the supply line, when I caught that faint copper tang that means old pipes are tired. She hovered at a polite distance, arms crossed, watching me work. The kitchen was immaculate. Too clean, really, like a magazine photo where no one actually lived. "Almost done," I said, tightening the compression fitting. "Should hold for another few years." "Thank you." Her voice had this careful quality, like she rehearsed simple conversations. "You're very thorough." I wiped my hands on the shop rag, packed my tools, left an itemized invoice on the counter. Every part, every minute, all spelled out. Professional armor, my mom called it. Keep the lines clear. Claire smiled then. Really smiled, not that polite mask. "There's something else that needs your attention." She led me to a cabinet near the breakfast nook. The upper hinge was loose, door hanging slightly crooked, but when I tested it, the screws weren't stripped. The wood wasn't damaged. It was like someone had deliberately backed them out half a turn. I fixed it anyway. Took maybe 3 minutes. "Perfect," she said, running her finger along the door edge. "I hate when things don't align properly." I stepped onto the porch, heard the faint hum of the automatic timer testing the porch light, glanced back once. She was still standing in the doorway, hand resting on the frame I'd just straightened. That afternoon, back in my workshop, Noah dropped off some fittings and made jokes about the fancy street. I logged the Whitfield job, filed the carbon copy. Around 5, my phone buzzed. A photo! The cabinet handle I'd fixed crooked again. I stared at the screen for a long time, debate whether to reply. My phone rang, Mom checking if I'd eaten, reminding me about Sunday dinner. After I hung up, I typed, "Can swing by tomorrow, 9:10?" The response came back fast. 9:30 is fine. I set an early alarm, packed my tool roll. The workshop smelled like coffee and machine oil, familiar and safe, but I kept thinking about that cabinet door, how deliberately loose those screws had been. The next morning, Mrs. Patel was watering her roses when I pulled up, gave me a warm wave from across the cul-de-sac, the kind of neighborhood where everyone knew everyone's business. Claire met me at the door in jeans and a cream sweater. "I'm sorry to bother you again so soon." "No bother." I fixed the handle in under 2 minutes. Too easy, too quick. "Would you like some tea?" I should have said no. Should have taken my tools and left. But something in her voice. "Sure." We sat at her kitchen island, domestic small talk, her charity committee, my job backlog. She mentioned her husband traveled for work. I mentioned my mom worried I worked too much. Normal conversation, but underneath it, something else. The way she paused before answering. The way she refilled my cup without asking. When I left, I heard the soft thud of that cabinet door closing behind me. Perfectly aligned now. The sound was satisfying and too intimate, like I'd fixed something that wasn't really broken. An hour later, at a duplex across town, my phone buzzed again. "Laundry room valve is hissing." If you're close, I was 15 minutes away. Should have finished the duplex job first, but I found myself packing up, telling my client I'd return in an hour. Claire's laundry room smelled like fabric softener and that citrus soap. The valve needed a new compression ring, 5-minute fix. I showed her how to shut off the water line if it happened again. Just turn it clockwise until it stops, I said. She leaned over to see the shutoff valve. Our hands almost touched when she passed me the dish towel. Almost, but not quite. The kind of almost that makes your chest tight. Thank you for coming so quickly. Another careful pause. I hope I'm not taking advantage. You're not. But as I walked to my truck, the first heavy raindrops starting to fall, I wondered if that was true. The storm hit hard that afternoon. I texted Noah to reschedule the gutter job, sat in my workshop listening to rain on the roof. Around 3, Claire called. There's a small leak near the back door. Nothing urgent, but I'll be right over. The threshold was swollen from the rain, creating a tiny gap where water could seep in. Minor issue, but she'd called me instead of waiting it out. She brought coffee in a metal mug, the rim warm against my palm. We stood under the covered porch, listening to rain drumming the gutters. The sound wrapped around us like a private room. I should probably get that gutter cleaned out, she said. I can do it when the weather clears. You don't have to fix everything, you know. I know, but I noticed things, like how her wedding ring was turned inward, diamond against her palm, like how she held the coffee mug with both hands, as if warming herself. Headlights swept across the cul-de-sac. I recognized the BMW before it turned into the driveway. Graham, she said quietly. I gathered my tools fast, stepped into the shadow of the porch column. Graham parked, jogged through the rain with his jacket over his head. Sociable energy, bigger laugh than necessary. Evan, right? He pumped my hand. What brings you out in this weather? I explained about the threshold leak. He nodded, glanced at Claire. This old house always wants something, doesn't it? It keeps us busy, she said carefully. Graham pulled out his wallet, offered to pay on the spot. I declined. I'd send an invoice, professional distance, but when I met Claire's eyes, there was something there, almost like gratitude, but deeper. The porch light blinked once as I reached my truck. Timer reset. But I thought about that blink all the way home. That night, logging parts and labor, I found an email from the HOA, new note about increased contractor traffic, and a request to register vendors. Mrs. Patel's name on the bottom, friendly but firm. Noah called while I was reading it. Paper trails cut both ways, he said when I told him. Just remember that. After I hung up, Mom called. Heard something in my voice, the way mothers do. Attention is a gift, baby, she said. Just don't hand it where it turns into pain. I drafted 3 different texts to Claire about the HOA thing, deleted all of them. The next morning, I had a garbage disposal install on the other side of town. Easy job, but it put me near the Whitfield neighborhood around noon. When Claire texted about a sticking door in her studio, I was already 5 minutes away. Studio? I texted back. I'll show you. She led me through the house to a room I hadn't seen. Half-finished canvases lined the walls, easel by the window, palette thick with oil paint, a self-portrait turned toward the wall. The door wasn't actually stuck, just misaligned in the frame. Humidity had shifted things slightly. I adjusted the strike plate, tested the latch. Perfect fit now, I said. I called you because you notice things. The words came out soft, like a confession. Other people would have forced it or ignored it completely. I tested the door again. That satisfying, soft thud of everything lining up right. The handle was never really loose either, she added. I just wanted to see if you'd come back. Something shifted between us then, not crossing a line exactly, more like acknowledging the line was there. I left another detailed invoice on her kitchen counter. Professional armor, polished bright. But driving away, I kept thinking about those unfinished paintings, about the careful way she'd said my name when showing me the studio, about how the door whispered shut now instead of sticking. The next day, around 4, I found myself driving past the cul-de-sac after finishing a call nearby. No reason, just checking. The porch light was already on, though it was still daylight. Through the kitchen window, I could see movement. Steam from a kettle, maybe. I made it to the corner before I turned around. Knocked on the front door with some excuse about checking the laundry valve. Professional follow-up. Claire opened the door in paint-stained clothes, hair pulled back. She looked younger somehow, more real. Actually, she said, there is something. She led me back to the kitchen. The cabinet door was crooked again. This time, we both smiled. Daylight only, I said, tightening the screws. Doors stay open. Of course, but we both knew something had changed, in the way she watched me work, in the way I took longer than necessary to align things perfectly, in the domestic rhythm we'd somehow fallen into. Mrs. Patel knocked while I was adjusting the door, slid an HOA flyer under the door about contractor registration. Claire answered with her bright public voice, thanked Mrs. Patel warmly. When the footsteps retreated, we looked at each other in the sudden quiet. I should probably register, I said. Probably. But neither of us moved toward the paperwork. The next morning, Graham left for his golf club. 20 minutes later, my phone buzzed. Morning window, was all the text said. I found myself driving over with a maintenance checklist I'd printed, official-looking document about seasonal inspections, professional excuse for the visit. Claire poured tea without asking what I wanted. The kitchen smelled like citrus and steam. I showed her the checklist, explained how she could handle small repairs herself. So, I won't need to call for little things, she said. Right. But I like when you come. She said it simple, honest, no games. I didn't answer directly, couldn't, but I spent extra time on the drawer that had been sticking, making sure it glided smooth. Our hands brushed when she passed me a towel. Brief contact, but it seemed to echo. The porch camera clicked faintly when I left. Tiny sound, but loud enough. Someone would be able to replay this later if they wanted to. That afternoon, loading tools with Noah, I kept checking my phone. He noticed. Fancy street keeping you busy? Some. But I was thinking about how Claire had said my name when she passed that towel, like it meant something more than just getting my attention. Around 5, I drove back to return a tarp I'd left in her mudroom. Flimsy excuse, but she let me in anyway. That's when I noticed the blue cashmere scarf, hanging on a hook by the back door like it belonged there. But I'd been in that mudroom 3 times, and it was new. It was in the dryer, Claire said, following my glance. I forgot it was there. She lifted it from the hook, let the fabric slide through her fingers, then hung it back up. Small ceremony, like she was marking something. We laughed about house quirks, the way old places develop personalities. I tightened a loose screw in the banister, took longer than I needed to. When I left, the scarf brushed against my sleeve. Soft cashmere, expensive. The texture stayed with me like a thought I couldn't finish. That evening, Graham texted Claire that he'd be late. I saw the porch lights flip on exactly at 6:30, driving past on my way home. Precise timing, like everything else in that house. But I found myself thinking about that scarf, how deliberately she'd hung it back up, how it seemed like a signal I was supposed to understand but didn't quite yet. The routine was forming without us naming it. Text about a small repair, quick visit, longer than necessary, professional distance that felt more intimate than touching. And every time I left, I heard that porch light humming to life behind me, like the house itself was keeping time. 2 days later, I was finishing a bathroom remodel when Claire texted about a forgotten screwdriver. I actually had left one behind, small flathead with a rubber grip. But when I got there, the sun was setting earlier than usual. Graham's car wasn't in the driveway, but Luce, their housekeeper, was returning from the grocery store. Claire opened the door, spoke in lower tones than normal. I wasn't sure you'd come this late, just dropping this off, but we both knew I could have waited until morning. Luce smiled at us through the kitchen window, that knowing look housekeepers get when they see too much. Claire stepped back into the porch shadow, and I followed without thinking. The HOA sent another notice, she said, about registering vendors. I know Noah thinks spacing out visits might be smart. She nodded, but something flickered across her face. Disappointment, maybe, or relief? Hard to tell. Footsteps on the walkway. Luce, heading to her car, keys jingling. She gave us another look, not judgmental, just aware. I should go, I said, but I didn't move right away. Neither did she. After Luce drove away, Claire touched my arm briefly. Be careful driving home. Simple words, but they felt like more. 2 days of regular jobs, apartment complex, office building, nothing special. On the third morning, my phone buzzed at 10. Text from Claire. If you have time today. No repair mentioned, no specific problem. Just if I had time. I finished the job I was on, made the drive. She had a mug warming on the counter when I walked in. Coffee the way I liked it without me asking. That felt significant somehow. Want to see something? She said. She led me back to the studio. This time, she turned the self-portrait around. Unfinished, but I recognized the thoughtful expression, the way her mouth set when she was deciding whether to trust someone. I started it 6 months ago, she said. Never know how to finish the eyes. I suggested a different latch for the studio door, something that would whisper shut instead of thudding. She liked that idea. Rain started while I worked on the latch. We stood at the threshold, listening to water hit the gutters. No conversation needed, just shared breath and the sound of the storm. Her ring was turned inward again. I pretended not to notice, but the detail lodged in my chest like a splinter. Rain always makes this house feel smaller, she said. Good smaller or bad smaller? Depends on the company. I finished the latch, tested it. Perfect, whisper soft closure. When I left, the rain had stopped, but everything felt charged, electric, like the air before lightning. That night, Noah and I grabbed takeout, sat in my workshop eating from containers. Fancy street done yet? He asked. Getting there. But we both knew I was lying. The next day, Graham emailed me directly. Please send detailed logs for all visits to date. I compiled everything without hesitation. Every part, every minute, every invoice. Transparency was my best defense. Mom stopped by while I was printing the documents, brought soup, and looked at the papers spread across my desk. Be kind to yourself, baby, she said. That was all. But it was enough. The next afternoon, I arrived to find Graham home unexpectedly. He met me at the door with that charming smile that didn't reach his eyes. Evan, good to see you. Mind if I ask about all these small visits? I explained about preventative maintenance, how catching small problems early saves money long term. All true, all reasonable. Makes sense, he said. And the studio door? That's fixed now? Claire tensed beside him. Yes, it closes properly now. Graham nodded, pulled out his wallet, paid one invoice in cash, crisp hundreds. I didn't like the feel of the bills in my hand. Too clean, too final. Appreciate all your work, he said. I think we're caught up now. Message received. That night, Claire texted, We should stop. I'm sorry. I stared at my phone in the empty workshop. Rain had stopped, but everything felt too quiet. I typed and deleted a dozen replies. Finally, sent nothing. Turned off the lights, went to bed without sleeping. For 2 days, I worked other jobs, apartment complex again, small office repairs, but every time I smelled citrus soap or heard a door thud shut, I looked up expecting to see her. Third evening, I found myself driving past the cul-de-sac, told myself I was pricing a fence job, which I wasn't. The blue scarf was gone from the mudroom hook. Porch light stayed off longer than usual. Mrs. Patel was checking her mailbox when I drove by the second time, gave me a look that said she saw more than she let on. I parked around the corner, sat with the engine off for 10 minutes, then drove home, feeling foolish. Next afternoon, Noah cornered me at the supply store. "Reputation cracks quieter than pipes," he said. I admitted I'd been driving past. He called it what it was. "You're not the plumber anymore. You're the story." Mom showed up that evening with a casserole, caught the tail end of Noah's warning. "Attention can be love, addiction, or charity," she said gently. "You need to know which you're giving." That night, organizing my tool drawer, I found Claire's small flathead screwdriver, the one I'd meant to return. Rubber grip, worn smooth, perfect weight in my palm. I'd pocketed it without thinking, but now it felt like evidence of something I couldn't name. Evening of the fifth day, I decided to return it. Walked the path instead of driving, screwdriver warm in my palm from nervous handling. Planned to drop it in the mailbox with a note. Professional closure. But the porch light hummed on suddenly. Then again. Then steady. I looked up at the kitchen window. Movement, then stillness. Knocked once. Claire opened the door in a gray sweater, hair loose around her shoulders. Eyes looked slept in but clear. "I have your screwdriver," I said. "I was wondering about that." We talked quietly at the threshold. Door open, house lights behind her. She explained the cancellation had been about protecting things that still mattered. I nodded. Made sense. I handed her the tool. She turned it over in her palm, testing the weight like I had. "There's something else," she said. She reached for an envelope on the hall table. My last invoice, but when she turned it over, there was writing on the back in her careful script. "Tuesdays, kitchen window, 4:15. A routine," she said, "with rules." I understood immediately. Not a relationship, not an affair, just acknowledgement, a way to notice each other without crossing lines that couldn't be uncrossed. The scarf? Blue means yes, missing means no. Simple code, elegant solution. I took the envelope, folded it twice, put it in my shirt pocket. "Tuesday," I said. The next Tuesday, I rode my bike past at 4:10. Checking a squeaky pedal was my excuse in case anyone asked. Steam fogged the kitchen window, kettle whistling inside. Claire wiped a circle clear in the condensation, didn't look out directly. I slowed, then kept riding. No message exchanged, no contact, just presence. The porch light hummed on at its usual time as I reached the corner. 1 week later, another Tuesday. Same time, same route. The blue scarf was missing from the hook. House quiet. Blinds half closed. I didn't stop. Didn't slow down. Today meant no. I felt oddly grateful for the clarity. Some days needed to be normal days. Mrs. Patel was trimming roses when I passed. "Good afternoon, Evan," she said. She looked relieved. Following Tuesday, rain threatened. I'd been running late on a sump pump job, cut it close getting to the neighborhood, 4:18 when I coasted past. 3 minutes late. The scarf was on the hook. Window steamed from the kettle. Claire lifted a mug into view briefly, then away. I slowed almost to a stop, then pedaled on. Heart steady, breathing normal. No texts afterward, no promises made, just the routine we'd built, operating exactly as designed. Rain started pattering my helmet as I turned the corner. I found myself smiling at nothing in particular. Week later, I was taping a new quote from Mom above my workbench. "Notice bravely." Good advice, hard to follow. I worked a full day. Disposal replacement, 3 faucet repairs, estimate on a bathroom remodel. Normal Tuesday. At 4:12, I checked the time, then simply took my usual route home, which happened to pass the cul-de-sac. The porch light hummed alive on schedule. The blue scarf wasn't there today. That was okay. Some doors stayed cracked instead of wide open. I pedaled past Mrs. Patel, watering her evening flowers. She waved, called out, "Beautiful evening for a ride." "Yes, ma'am, it is." At the corner, I coasted to a stop, looked back once. The house sat quiet in the golden light, perfectly maintained, keeping its secrets. My phone buzzed. Text from Mom. "Sunday dinner. Don't be late." I texted back. "Wouldn't miss it." Some routines were worth keeping. Others were worth building carefully, one Tuesday at a time. The porch light held steady behind me as I rode toward home. And I realized something I'd been too close to see before. This wasn't about fixing what was broken. It was about noticing what was already perfect, just waiting for someone to see it properly. Claire had taught me that, in the careful way she arranged small repairs, in the blue scarf that appeared and disappeared like a prayer flag, in the Tuesday window that steamed up exactly when it needed to. Some houses don't need new walls, they just need someone who notices where the light gets in. And some people don't need saving or changing or leaving their lives behind. They just need someone who sees them clearly, who shows up when they say they will, who understands that attention itself can be a kind of love. Tuesday routine. Kitchen window at 4:15, doors that stay cracked instead of slamming shut. It wasn't everything, but it was enough. I turned onto my street, workshop light already glowing warm in the dusk. Tool oil and coffee smells. Another quote from Mom I'd memorize tomorrow. Some kinds of caring don't need labels or promises or dramatic endings. They just need someone willing to notice, and someone worth noticing back. Tuesday after Tuesday after Tuesday, as long as the scarf kept appearing, as long as the window stayed lit, as long as the porch light hummed on exactly when it should, I'd keep riding past. Some routines become their own quiet form of prayer.